Winners and losers from Thursday Night Football next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers here with Adam Azer to talk about Thursday's Chiefs-Chargers games and to answer some start-sit questions for Week 2. And obviously the big note coming out of this Thursday night game is, one, as the kids say, Justin Herbert got that dog in him, I believe is what the kids would say. Suffered what looked to be a pretty bad rib injury, or what looked to be a rib injury, I suppose. Played through it, made a couple of incredible plays. Also had one play where he had a clear path to a first down and just threw the ball out of bounds because he was in that much pain. So it didn't look great. I suffered a bruised rib playing flag football last fall, and I could barely do my job. So clearly Justin Herbert has higher pain tolerance than I do. But
did someone grab your rib instead of the flag or something?
I know my teammate's shoulder. I went right into him. We were crossing. It was bad.
It sounds bad. It actually sounds bad.
It wasn't great, but Justin Herbert's got better doctors than I do. So, he's got some extra time before Week 3, but just in case the Chargers starting quarterback did have to miss time, how big of a downgrade do you think that is for this offense?
It's a huge downgrade. It would make two wide receivers, if Keenan Allen's back, go from must start to the CeeDee Lamb territory. Are we starting these guys? I don't know. I wouldn't even be able to speculate. I hope he's okay, but it would be a huge downgrade. It would be bad for Eckler too. It would be bad news for everyone. And they lost two offensive linemen in this game, by the way. We don't know the status of that yet.
All right, let's get a winner from this game. Who do you think comes out of this game looking better than they did coming in? And I'm not sure there's a lot of candidates here.
Phrasing it that way.
You could
Everett. Gerald Everett.
Yeah, I think that's probably the answer.
I think that's really tied to Keenan Allen personally, because if just looking at the routes he ran and the catches he made, a lot of that stuff, so much of it was short. And I'm sure the Chiefs were playing, a pretty conservative defense, trying to keep the Chargers short. But a lot of that, I think, was stuff that Keenan Allen would have thrived in. I think Allen probably would have had a really big game. So I would actually be looking to sell Gerald Everett. I wasn't a big Everett guy going into the year, but he obviously had a good game, followed up a good game with an even better game. I know he didn't score in this one, but he was targeted right near the end zone. He was out of gas and ended up being the most important play of the game, a 99-yard pick six, where Everett just miscommunication with Herbert. But he looks better. Second leading receiver on the team behind Mike Williams. Obviously, Mike Williams looks better, but that's not a surprise to anyone.
Yeah, he's
great. But remember, with Keenan Allen out, everyone should do better. And three guys, because Palmer caught that touchdown, three guys did better than what they normally would. And Everett, I think, a huge beneficiary of the Allen absence.
Yeah, Palmer with an all-time fantasy bailout for those of you who started him, because needed the garbage time. Well, not garbage time touchdown, but, they were down 2 scores at the time. So that was nice. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he had the long run. He ended up, with about 15 PPR points. 4 targets is a pretty good sign, but still not loving the usage from him. But who's a loser from this one? And I think there's one obvious answer.
I'd say the Chiefs wide receivers. Were you going to say Juju?
I was going to say Travis Kelce or Juju, yeah.
Kelce, look, here's the thing. The Chargers had a pretty bad defense last year, but they really could have one of the best secondaries in football with J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel, and Derwin James. Derwin James could be a tight end eliminator. He wasn't shadowing Travis Kelce, but J.C. Jackson and James were on Kelce enough. They got a good pass rush, obviously. So this was a tough matchup for this team. You don't really consider that with the Chiefs because they're just the Chiefs. You're never benching Kelce, but not worried about Kelce. Not worried about Kelce. The wide receivers, I was disappointed in Juju. I thought he was really the only one that could be an every week must start. That's going to be reevaluated after this. But again, terrific secondary here. Asante Samuel played lights out. Jackson had a terrible play where he gave up the deep pass to Watson, but they're going to be a challenge for a lot of teams. So I'm not too down on Kelce, but you definitely got to reconsider Juju as a must start.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's move on to some week 2. Excuse me. I almost got us ahead to week 3. Week 2 start sit questions, and they're going to revolve around the injury report. And the Buccaneers injury report is long right now, and it's mostly wide receivers. Leonard Fournette is actually on there, but he was limited. I expect him to play. But Mike Evans didn't practice with a calf injury on Thursday. Julio Jones didn't practice with a knee injury on Thursday. Russell Gage limited with that hamstring, so I'm assuming that he's okay and going to play. But Evans and Julio, tough matchup against the Saints. Even if they play, are you trusting them in your lineup this week?
feel like with Evans, you don't really have a choice. I don't know who has the guts to sit Mike Evans, but he's had one game in his career against Marshawn Lattimore with more than 13 PPR fantasy points. So he's never good against him. I don't know that I could be good enough at wide receiver to sit Mike Evans. Yeah, I don't really trust Julio as much as I did earlier in the week. Friday's going to be a big day, Chris. I don't really know what to say about these guys right now. To be honest with you, I don't really trust Tom Brady at the current moment.
Yeah.
I don't know who, I'm not going to pick up Matt Ryan or anything like that. But if I did draft two quarterbacks, two really good ones, I'd start Matthew Stafford over Tom Brady, Russell Wilson.
I'd start Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins over him.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think I could disagree with that. I think it's a good point. Yeah, I'd agree. I would start those guys over him. Now look, if Julio and Evans both play, maybe that changes things. But right now I'm nervous. I'm thinking the Saints really limit this offense.
All right. Are you starting J.K. Dobbins if he's cleared?
Yes, I am.
Interesting.
As a low-end running back and a high-end flex, but I'm not avoiding him. They need him. They really need him. They had no running game against one of the worst run defenses in football last year. So, yeah, I'm going to be more bullish on him than most.
And I already know the answer from this one. I know you're starting Allen Lazard, Adam, but what do you expect from him in his likely debut? We're not 100% sure he's going to play, but he's been limited so far.
A touchdown. At least opportunities for a touchdown. I think this is going to be the guy that Aaron Rodgers trusts. He really needs someone that he has chemistry with, someone he can rely on, someone who's going to do the right things and be a red zone and green zone and end zone option for him, which Allen Lazard was all last year. And I expect a big performance from the Packers offense coming off that loss, facing a bad Bears team at home on Sunday night. Aaron Rodgers is so good prime time, especially at home. So I think Lazard's going to have a good game. I'd start him over J.K. Dobbins, for example, in any format. So I would think Lazard to me is going to be an easy start.
All right. We're going to have to keep a close eye on those Sunday morning inactives. So make sure you tune in to the full episode of Fantasy Football Today on Friday. Make sure you tune into FFT and 5 on Sunday morning and our YouTube stream, youtube.com/fantasy football today. We'll have more for you when the news breaks. For Adam, I'm Chris. We'll see you next time. And for those of you watching on YouTube, stick around. I'm going to answer some of your questions in the chat. Adam's sleepy. He's going to go to bed. So we'll see him later. But I'm going to hang around. There's a couple hundred of you watching. We'll answer some questions. So get your questions in the chat. And Adam, you can go to sleep.
Good night.
All right. Cool. Thanks for watching, guys. And I'll get some of your questions up. Let's see. Adam's just hanging around.
Oh, you're doing it live.
I'm doing it live.
You're doing it in the chat, like typing after you.
Oh, no. I'm gonna be streaming this.
Good night, everybody. You got to go enjoy my air conditioning. See ya.
Yeah, Adam's got his replaced air conditioning. He's got a cockroach somewhere in his apartment, or in his house. Hopefully that's gone away. But yeah, I'm gonna hang out. I think we're gonna do this every Thursday night. Try to hang out for maybe half an hour after the game and answer some questions. So I'll start throwing your questions up from the chat. And here's one from Albert L. Michael Pittman is out? ? No, we don't know that yet. I believe he was limited on Wednesday, did not practice on Thursday, which is always a concern, because he's dealing with a quad injury. And anytime you see the midweek addition to the injury report and the going from limited to out, that always makes me think that it was a practice injury and that there's some risk of him missing. I haven't really seen any talk from the Colts beat writers on Michael Pittman's status for week 2, but obviously it's a concern. And I don't think there's anyone there who I would be interested in starting. Alec Pierce is in the concussion protocol. I'm not sure he's going to be able to play. Ashton Dulin was playing some snaps last week, but I don't think he's really a particularly good player. Mo Alley Cox, we've seen some stretches from him. Maybe he enters the streaming tight end discussion, but not someone I'm particularly excited about. Mike Strawn, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, is an interesting sleeper, but definitely not someone I would be trusting this week. Mark Ingram, if Alvin Kamara is out. Yeah, Alvin Kamara dealing with that rib injury. He didn't practice Thursday, but earlier in the week, Dennis Allen was talking about it. He made it sound like it wasn't a significant injury, so hopefully that holds, and I'm hoping Alvin Kamara is able to play. But if he doesn't, I think Ingram gets into the RB2 discussion. I think he's probably in the the Miles Sanders range. He would be higher than I would have had Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming into this game. I know Edwards-Helaire did have like 15 PPR points, but only 8 carries, 4 targets. It wasn't like a super great game for Clyde Edwards-Helaire in terms of the usage he got. So, you kind of got lucky with that long run at the end. Ingram hurt too. Yeah, he's dealing with, I think it's an ankle injury, but it doesn't sound serious. They did sign Latavius Murray, the Saints did, to their practice squad. He has experience in that offense. So, we'll see. But yeah, I think it looks like Ingram's got a pretty good chance of playing. He's been limited both days. Kamara did not practice Thursday. Let's see. Palmer touchdown saved me. Yeah, I was not viewing him as a must start guy. He was more like a wide receiver 3 for me. So it's one where you thank the fantasy gods that you got the touchdown, and you move on and you hope that you don't have to start Josh Palmer. Cause yeah, he was targeted 8 times, 4 catches, 30 yards and a touchdown. I think he's just a guy, he was what, a 3rd round pick a couple of years ago. And, had one decent game with Keenan Allen out. I didn't think he was all that impressive as a rookie. So he's someone that even when Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are out, I think he's going to be a low end fantasy option. So just be happy you got that. Chris, should I trade Ezekiel Elliott, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Aaron Rodgers for Barkley, Lawrence, and Higgins? Okay, so you're getting a clear upgrade at running back. I've got Saquon Barkley as a top 3 running back for the rest of the season. I was incredibly impressed by what we saw from him and his usage in this offense. And the fact that this offense just looks modern, like that's a big deal. I think they're going to be better than they were last season, even if I don't think they're going to be great. Trevor Lawrence is a downgrade from Aaron Rodgers, but if you're going to downgrade anywhere, quarterback's an okay spot to do it, especially because I don't think Aaron Rodgers is one of the, 8 or so guys who are true difference makers. And T. Higgins is an upgrade on St. Brown, I think. I think that's close. That's pretty close to a coin flip. But yeah, I would give up Zeke, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Aaron Rodgers for Barkley, Lawrence, and Higgins. So good job. Someone just dropped Dameon Pierce. Should I drop Kenneth Walker or Treylon Burks in a 14-team standard league to get Pierce? I think I would drop. It's always tough because I do think Burks is going to have a bigger role this week. I think he only played 13 snaps last week, but he had 5 catches. They really looked to, get him involved in the game. We saw that late in the preseason as well. So I do think there's a chance that Burks sees a much bigger route participation this week and has a big breakout, but I also think it's probably still going to be pretty slow for him. Walker, it just depends on Rashad Penny's health. If Penny's healthy, I think he's good enough that Walker's going to be a secondary back, but Penny's injury history makes it pretty easy to see a path for Kenneth Walker being a 15 carry per game guy. So I think I would drop Burks, but Burks controls his own destiny more than Kenneth Walker does. So it depends on who you have faith in, but either one, I would rather have Dameon Pierce than Kenneth Walker or Treylon Burks. Half PPR, Michael Carter or Devin Singletary. I've got Michael Carter ranked higher, and then Christian Kirk or Joshua Palmer. Well, hopefully Joshua Palmer had an okay game, but I think Christian Kirk's going to be better than 13 PPR points. So hopefully you started him. Certainly more upside than that. Elijah Moore, Drake London, Devontae Smith, Michael Carter, half PPR pick 2. I'm going Elijah Moore and Michael Carter. I don't feel super great about Elijah Moore. He didn't get a lot of opportunities from Joe Flacco, but that game was so weird. They threw 59 times, 19 of them to their running backs. I don't necessarily think we're going to see that again. So, yeah. Let's see. Thoughts on Juju, please. Well, maybe Juju Smith-Schuster just isn't that good. Patrick Mahomes apologized to us in advance for how frustrating and inconsistent this receiving core was going to be. And that's what we saw. Juju Smith-Schuster has now had one awesome half of football through 2 weeks. He didn't really play much in the second half last week. And then he was a total non-factor this week, 3 catches for 10 yards. I really think they're going to spread the ball around a ton. And it's possible that Juju Smith-Schuster is just going to be inconsistent. And the problem with that is you can live with inconsistent when it's Mike Williams. And the, inconsistent games are he doesn't do much, but then he has 8 catches, 113 yards, and a touchdown. Mike Williams is going to get those downfield targets. He's a big play guy. Juju Smith-Schuster isn't that guy. Even in this offense, I don't think he's ever going to be the downfield threat. He's going to be someone who, at his best, gets a lot of targets. He's going to be more downfield oriented than he was in Pittsburgh. But I think you can look at Juju Smith-Schuster and safely conclude that he's just a guy, and in this offense, that could make him a wide receiver too. But I think it's going to be frustrating. Justin Herbert's season over. I don't think we have any reason to think that yet. I mean, it was a concern and he's going to get x-rays, but no, I don't. Let's not overreact yet. It didn't look great, but he also made some pretty awesome throws. I like this question. Curtis Samuel, Rashad Bateman, or Greg Dortch? Greg Dortch, slot receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. Rondale Moore has not practiced this week. So in your deeper PPR leagues, I do like Greg Dortch. He had 9 targets, 6 catches in week 1, but I still have Rashad Bateman ranked highest of this group. There's going to be a chance for big plays against this Dolphins defense. It's just a question of whether the offensive line, the protection can hold up, because Dolphins, I believe, did zero blitzes more against the Ravens than any team did last season. That means, no safety help over top. They're going to send the house against him. And that leaves, it's a very aggressive defensive style that if Rashad Bateman can get behind his defender, he's going to have a chance for some big plays, which we saw last week. Bailed you out with a big play. But yeah, I would go with Bateman here over Samuel and Dortch, but I think all 3 of them have some appeal. Chris, I have Herbert only. Would you consider putting a waiver claim in for Stafford? He was dropped today, or hold tight and get Winston? So yeah, I think absolutely coming out of this game, you should try to get another quarterback, whether that's Winston or whether that's Stafford. I have higher expectations for Stafford. I did like what I saw from Winston. I like what I've seen from him really in this Saints offense. He's been very efficient. He's been very effective in this offense, and he's got real weapons, but I think you would still prefer Stafford. So if it comes down to it, I think you'd rather have Stafford than Winston. Is Juju droppable? No. I think he's still going to be useful for fantasy. I don't think he's going to be a superstar. And that's the way you have to think about it. As long as you keep him the right expectation level, he'll be fine. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, sell high or hold? I think he's a sell high after these 2 games. He had the big, 52-yard run. And other than that, I mean, before that, he had 22 rushing yards on 7 carries. He had 4 catches for 44 yards. 4 catches are nice, but Jerick McKinnon clearly has a role. Isaiah Pacheco didn't really have a role in this one, so I think that's a good sign for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But fact of the matter is, this Chiefs team just isn't going to run the ball very much. I think that's the key moving forward is they're going to spread the ball around on offense, and you're hoping Clyde Edwards-Helaire gets enough targets to make up for it. But if someone's viewing him as an RB2, I'd be looking to sell because I think he's probably more in the 25-ish range. Friday is the day to watch for with guys practicing. Anything before that is too early to start worrying. No, it's not too early. It's too early to make any concrete plans. But look, I write a newsletter for Friday morning, Fantasy Football Today newsletter. You see the little code right here in the top. You should go subscribe. And I preview every game. And that's our last big chance to get all the injuries out there before Sunday. So, yeah, you shouldn't overreact to Wednesday and Thursday injury participations. We talked about the Buccaneers guys during the FFT and 5 show, and Julio Jones. I think there's a chance that Julio Jones not practicing Wednesday and Thursday is mostly just a rest thing. I don't doubt that he has a knee injury, but it's probably, there's a decent chance that at his age and given his history, they're just going to give him rest. And so I expect Julio Jones to miss a lot of practice this year without it necessarily being a concern. But at this point, I don't know. I'm assuming that. And hopefully Friday he'll get a full practice in and he'll be fine. Cordero Patterson or Jeff Wilson if Alvin Kamara is out, half PPR. So I think it's got to be Cordero Patterson. I like Jeff Wilson, but I think he's more in the RB2/3 range. Kyle Shanahan said he's going to go with the hot hand. That's at running back. That means it's the hot hand plus Deebo Samuel plus Trey Lance. So you don't know what the goal line work is going to look like, but I would guess it's going to be more tilted towards Deebo Samuel because he's so good down there. So I like Patterson. His pass catching, I don't expect another 22 carry game from him. That was, I believe, the most of his career. But yeah, I think he's still going to be pretty good. Let's see. Who's this guy and who cares what he says? Thank you for the comment. I'm Chris Towers, host of the Fantasy Football Today podcast, Fantasy Football Today in 5 podcast, and Fantasy Football Today newsletter. Some folks saying Juju was getting wide open but not looked at, the Allen Robinson effect. I don't know. I mean, both of these guys, like, it's been a while since we've seen Allen Robinson and Juju Smith-Schuster be difference makers. So I think it's the kind of thing where you have to kind of assume that they're not great players at this point. And, Patrick Mahomes, like, I don't think Patrick Mahomes is just not looking at Juju Smith-Schuster. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. Like, this guy knows what he's doing. Smash the like button. Yes, thank you, MMA fanatic. I appreciate that. Thoughts on Everett after tonight? Adam was a little more pessimistic when we talked about it earlier on. He thinks that the production that you got from Jared Everett in the past 2 games has been largely because of Keenan Allen's absence, and I think that's fair. Everett's touchdown did come after Allen was ruled out in week 1. Obviously, 10 targets today. That's great, but a lot of that stuff was, short and intermediate areas that Keenan Allen's going to dominate. So I think there's room for Jared Everett to be a sell high candidate, but I also think he's just a pretty good player who's likely to get, 4 to 6 targets most weeks. And I think that makes him a viable PPR option at tight end. Let's go for some more questions. Looking through the chat. Thoughts on Austin Eckler's usage tonight? Yeah. I think that is 6 carries with inside the 5 for the Chargers through 2 weeks. And Austin Eckler, I believe he doesn't have any of them. That's a concern. The passing game usage from week 1, clearly not a concern tonight. 9 catches, 55 yards on 10 targets. We saw this last year. I think he didn't have a catch in week 1, or maybe he had one. It was one of the worst receiving games of Austin Eckler's career. And he bounced back and was, one of the best running backs in fantasy. So I'm not worried there. But the goal line work does seem to be a concern. And I think there was one particularly telling moment where I believe it was on the Xander Horvath touchdown that opened up the second quarter. Sonny Michel was in. It was a goal line formation, I formation. Sonny Michel was in on the last play before the first quarter ended. They come back from the quarter break, and Sonny Michel was still in there. So that does make me think that it wasn't just Austin Eckler was winded or, something like that. I think, they might actually trust Sonny Michel down there. And that's not to say they don't trust Austin Eckler, but, he's got competition now. Is Hardman worth a pickup? I don't think so. 3 catches for 49 yards, 4 targets. He's going to be involved, but they're going to spread the ball around. I think he's, even in a 14-team league, I can't see myself really trusting Mecole Hardman. At this point in his career, we know who he is. Should I start Elijah Moore or Curtis Samuel over Rashad Bateman? I would be going with Elijah Moore over Rashad Bateman. I would rank them Moore, Bateman, and Curtis Samuel. I don't think Pacheco would make it a timeshare with McKinnon if CEH ever got banged up. I think it would definitely be a timeshare. Pacheco, they really like what he's done so far. He gives me a little bit of the Christine Michael vibe, where he's this great athlete who I'm not necessarily sure is a great football player. His production in college was obviously pretty lackluster. A lot of people will blame the bad situation in Rutgers, but I think that stuff does have some signal. So, McKinnon would get a lot of opportunities if Clyde Edwards-Helaire got hurt. And, for what it's worth, he did get stepped on and missed some time in this game, and Pacheco barely played. So that's noteworthy. But yeah, I think Pacheco would have a role. I'm not sure he'd be a must-start guy if Clyde Edwards-Helaire missed time, but I think he'd have a role. Let's see some more. Is Chris on the West Coast? Ask FFT, does Chris sleep? Does Chris sleep Chris sleeps in the mornings. I'm putting the finishing touches on the Fantasy Football Today podcast or newsletter right now. So that'll be out tomorrow morning, and I'll go to sleep around 3, wake up at 11 a.m., maybe play some Madden before I go to sleep, get a couple games in once I'm done with the newsletter. Julio Jones wincing every time he got up off the turf on Sunday was scary enough for me to see as a fantasy manager, very brittle at this stage of his career. I think that's fair. The nice thing is you didn't invest much in Julio Jones, but there is going to be risk with him every time you start him, that he leaves the game or has a limited role or whatever. So I don't think there's going to be really a point where Julio Jones is someone you necessarily feel great about every week. Drop Pacheco for Tyrion Davis-Price. If you're in one of those leagues that allows you to drop someone on your bench after they've played, I think this is a good opportunity to drop Pacheco because he's going to need a Clyde Edwards-Helaire injury to have a role. J.K. Dobbins or Najee Harris. So I'm viewing Najee Harris as like a high-end RB2. I don't think I can bring myself to sit him, and especially not for J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins is coming back from a serious knee injury. We don't know what kind of role he's going to be. We don't know how much burst he's going to have. I expect him to look good, but it wouldn't be a surprise if he was just okay for his first week or two back. Remember, Saquon Barkley didn't quite look like himself for a couple of weeks until last season when I think it was like week 3 when he really started to look better, and then he had the ankle injury in week 5, and it kind of derailed his whole season. But hopefully Dobbins doesn't get stepped on. But I would still start Najee Harris, but I'm looking to sell Najee Harris. I'm really worried about this foot injury. The fact that he had the Liz Frank injury in training camp, makes it through 3/4 of his first game, suffers an aggravation by all accounts. Even though it's not serious, I'm worried that, one, it's going to limit his, explosiveness. And this is already a bad offense, so that's an issue. And 2, I think there's going to be injury risk. So I'm looking to sell Najee Harris. If I could get a second round pick, like a second round caliber player for him, I would be willing to do that. If I could get Tyreek Hill, if I could get Deebo Samuel, I think those, I'd be surprised if you could, but I would be trying to do that at running or wide receiver. And if I could swap him for, gosh, there's no way anybody would do Saquon Barkley for him after week 1. But, Aaron Jones, if you could get Aaron Jones plus something for Najee Harris, I would do that coming out of that game. Yes, I know we're worried about Aaron Jones a little bit, but I'm not really. He still ran more routes than AJ Dillon. I'm not thinking it's going to be the AJ Dillon show. Let's see. I hit the thumbs up on the way in. Did you? You guys should hit the like button. I don't see how many likes we've got, but hopefully it's a lot. What are my thoughts on David Montgomery going forward? And do I think Khalil Herbert eats into his production? Yes, I think Khalil Herbert is going to have a bigger role this season than we've seen a running back have alongside David Montgomery. However, week 1, I think a lot of people saw Khalil Herbert get that one drive where he scored the touchdown and put the Bears ahead, or iced the win at least. And I think people are looking at that and say, well, David Montgomery's job is at risk now. But the thing to keep in mind is I believe the way they were using Montgomery and Herbert was 2 drives Montgomery, 1 for Herbert. And I think it was just Montgomery. Everything was just Herbert's role or turn would be the word to use there. So I'm not necessarily too worried about that, except Montgomery's not going to get 80% of the snaps and touches now. Maybe it's more like 65%. He'll need to be a little more efficient, but he's got the passing game role. I don't think there's much risk of Khalil Herbert breaking into that, and hopefully the offense will be better. So I'm cautiously optimistic about David Montgomery, but certainly not excited. What happened to Juju? Time to trade, maybe in a package with CeeDee Lamb. Look, if you could get CeeDee Lamb for Juju Smith-Schuster, I would definitely do that because Dak Prescott's not going to be out forever, and CeeDee Lamb should be a top 15 wide receiver when Dak Prescott's healthy. I think the idea that he's definitely a top 6 wide receiver like we were hoping coming into the season, I'm skeptical of that, and I was going into the season. But yeah, I would absolutely try to trade for CeeDee Lamb. I'm trying to think of Terry McLaurin. That was the guy that I suggested in the newsletter. Trade Terry McLaurin for CeeDee Lamb if you can do that right now. Terry McLaurin has more competition for targets than he has, really at any point in his Washington career. And, you got bailed out with that long touchdown, but I think there could be some pretty disappointing stretches from McLaurin. He's more like a wide receiver 3 for me. So give me CeeDee Lamb over him if you can make that trade. Okay, this guy really wants you to know in the chat that Juju is a drop 100%. I don't agree. So you can stop spamming the chat now, please. Put user in timeout. He's got to calm down. Deep league, okay to pick up Jordan Mason in case we get Shanahan. Absolutely. Jordan Mason was someone who got some buzz in training camp in the same way that we've seen Elijah Mitchell in previous seasons, and we've seen Raheem Mostert. It seems like the 49ers always have a guy who comes out of nowhere and becomes relevant. And by all accounts, Jordan Mason was that guy in training camp and even going back to mini camp and OTAs. He's an undrafted free agent, but Kyle Shanahan has talked a lot about wanting to get more size in this backfield. It's why they drafted Trey Sermon last offseason. It's why they drafted Tyrion Davis-Price. But by all accounts, Jordan Mason was better than both of them in training camp. So I'm really excited to see him get an opportunity, and it wouldn't shock me. Jeff Wilson, I think, is an okay player, but there's, always the chance that Jordan Mason can be more than that. If I rated the percentage of dropping, that's a good one. ETN or Kareem Hunt for the flex. I'm going with Kareem Hunt. I was worried. I was disappointed by what I saw from Travis Etienne. And in watching some of his preseason snaps, especially, he had a bad drop in the preseason. I went back and watched some of those plays, and he's not as natural a pass catcher as I think he gets credit for. I think he's someone who is good with the ball in his hands, and that's what makes him a valuable player in the passing game. Because if you can get the ball in his hands, I think he's going to be valuable. But he has some, concentration drops or inconsistent hands, whatever you want to call it. And I think the concern is that James Robinson is just, if he's himself, if James Robinson is James Robinson, he's a good player. He's not explosive. He's not an incredible athlete, but he's a good player who doesn't make mistakes, and that's useful, and coaches like that. And so I could see a situation where, James Robinson's getting 60% of the carries and 40% of the snap or routes, and that's going to make it hard to trust ETN. So, Hunt obviously is already in that role. He's in the 60% of the routes, 40% of the carries, or even fewer carries, but we know he's good. So I'm okay with Hunt over ETN this week. Eckler gave me 17 points in my league, but Brandon Staley's an idiot. His play calling is so trash. Yeah, it wasn't great. I don't know. I don't think there's anything to worry about. The talent in Los Angeles is so incredible that it's going to be okay. But it's been frustrating to say the least so far. Eckler definitely got bailed out a little bit late with some of those catches, but that's what makes him so valuable for fantasy. Is no matter what the game script is, Austin Eckler is going to have a valuable role. Hopefully he gets some goal line carries. I think it's become a thing now, I think, over the first couple of games. So hopefully we'll see that, turn around, and Austin Eckler will get some chances early on next week to get some goal line carries. I'm going to go through some more of the questions. Do I start Amon-Ra St. Brown or Javonte Williams at the flex? That's a really tough call. I'm going to pull up my projections and see what I've got. My gut reaction is Javonte still, but I think that one's pretty close. Let's see. Javonte over Amon-Ra St. Brown, but it's very close. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he got off to a weird start yesterday or week one. He had I think at least one drop and, had a couple of plays where he didn't look great, but came on strong when the Lions needed him. They went to him and he looked great. Kelsey or Andrews rest of season. I'm taking Kelsey over Mark Andrews. I think, it's possible that it's just the two of them and Kyle Pitts, in a hot competition because, Kelsey wasn't great this week. Mark Andrews wasn't great in week one. So, I think you can give Kelsey the benefit of the doubt there. Flex Renfro, Julio Jones, or Brandon Ayuk. If Julio Jones is okay, if he practices in full and we get or even if limited, but we get good reports, I'm starting him over Hunter Renfro. Allen Robinson is droppable. No, I would give him another week, but like I said about Juju Smith-Schuster earlier, given how bad Allen Robinson was last season, and given the metrics were bad, the underlying stuff, it wasn't like just the numbers. He was inefficient. He wasn't getting separation. I think, there's a decent chance that Allen Robinson's just not a difference maker anymore. And I'm willing to give him another week. I'm willing to give him another couple of weeks, but I'm willing to give him a week as a starter. I will start him this week. He's like a top 30 wide receiver for me. And then if he doesn't perform, I'm not dropping him in week 2, but he's on thin ice. You're on thin ice, buddy. All right. Michael Carter traded for Aaron Jones. That's an A A++ for the Aaron Jones side. I don't think Michael Carter's going to get 9 targets ever again, or maybe not ever again, but certainly not every week. I think Aaron Jones, he still played like 61% of the pass routes. I still think he's the number 1 back in Green Bay. Not related to tonight's game, but who should I start this Sunday? Joe Burrow or Russell Wilson? I will consult my rankings and go with Joe Burrow, just ahead of Russell Wilson, but it's a minuscule difference. I mean, Joe Burrow is number 7, Russell Wilson's number 9, and I've got basically no difference in my projections between Joe Burrow and Derek Carr. So that's not super helpful, but I would start Joe Burrow ahead of Russell Wilson. Juju was always a bum. The man benefited from Antonio Brown. I mean, I don't know. Like, is Antonio Brown the reason Juju Smith-Schuster had 1,400 yards? Like 1,400, there are not a lot of guys who have 1,400 yards as 21-year-olds in the NFL. That's really hard to do. So I don't want to just say that. Cooper Rush is a good football name, so I expect him to do well. I had back when I was in college, I worked at the Florida International University newspaper, and I remember one signing day going through all of the top prospects and rating them solely based on the quality of their name as a football player. And Cooper Rush is a very good football player name. I will give you that. Where do I rank Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now? Well, number 1 running back in number 2 running back in week 2 so far. Feel pretty good about that one. But moving forward, I think he's around 30. I think, like, would you rather have Michael Carter and Breece Hall, Michael Carter or Breece Hall or Clyde Edwards-Helaire? I think I would rank Clyde Edwards-Helaire last of those 3, just because there's a path for both either Michael Carter or Breece Hall to be the clear lead back in that backfield. And I think they would be better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Even though Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the clear lead back in Kansas City, it's such a timeshare, and they don't give him enough high value touches that I just don't think there's much upside there. I would rather have Travis Etienne than him. I'd rather have Kareem Hunt. So yeah, I think like Clyde Edwards-Helaire is in the Rashad Penny range, where I think he'll be a decent starter, but I don't think there's much upside beyond that. Christian Watson is the future for the Green Bay Packers. I agree with that. I liked seeing him. I believe he ran the most routes of any of their wide receivers in week 1, despite the fact that on his very first play, I believe it's the very first play from scrimmage, he dropped a 75-yard touchdown. Now, obviously, dropping a 75-yard touchdown is a bad thing, especially when Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback, and Aaron Rodgers tends to get mad about things like that. But he still had a role, and he still got some targets, and he's still, a part of their offense. And I think he's the most talented guy there. I'm not a believer in Allen Lazard, Sammy Watkins, and Randall Cobb, obviously not so much. So I think if Christian Watson is available in your league, I would try to add him. Marlon Mack may be the answer for the 49ers if he can stay healthy. Niners just signed him. They cut Trey Sermon, remember. Marlon Mack, I think he's dusted. I just don't think there's anything there. The opportunity was there with Houston. Like, if he still had juice, he would have made the Houston Texans. He didn't make the Houston Texans. So I think Marlon Mack's probably not going to be a factor in San Francisco. Miles Sanders or Brandon Cook in flex standard league. So non-PPR does lean Miles Sanders' direction a little bit. Let me check the rankings. I do have Miles Sanders ranked higher. Loved seeing him get, I think, 3 carries inside of the 5-yard line. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Philadelphia. They had 4 different guys score a touchdown, 4 different guys get a goal line carry, basically, in week 1. So that was concerning. But Miles Sanders is one of them, and that wasn't something you could say last year. So feel good about that. Which rookie wide receiver do I prefer rest of season? Jahan Dotson, George Pickens, Christian Watson, or Romeo Dubes? I would go with Jahan Dotson. He's already running 80% of the routes. He's already showing good rapport with Carson Wentz. George Pickens, the role was okay, but they were manufacturing touches for Chase Claypool in week 1. He got the 6 carries. He got 5 targets, I think. Deontay Johnson. It wasn't just because Ben Roethlisberger can't throw the ball down the field. Deontay Johnson's just good. This is a thing that I hope people learn from Devontae Adams going to Las Vegas and getting 17 targets in week 1. Obviously, look, it's still 1 week. But Devontae Adams going to Las Vegas, going away from Aaron Rodgers and still being a monster and still being open constantly and still getting a ton of targets. Deontay Johnson getting more downfield targets, but still being like a 33% target share guy in week 1. Those guys are just good. They just get open. That's why the ball gets to them, So I think we need to have more faith in those guys that they're just target hogs. Let's see. Kyle Pitts should have a week like Mike Williams. I don't know if you're saying he will have a week like Mike Williams or if you're just suggesting that he should. Like, hey, Kyle Pitts, consider having a week like Mike Williams. But I agree. He's an incredible player. One thing that's underrated, and this is something I tried to hammer home every time I wrote about or talked about Kyle Pitts this offseason, was what he did as a rookie was impressive enough. 1,000 yards as a rookie tight end. There's only 3 guys have ever done that. He was 20 for most of the first month of the season. He doesn't turn 22 until like the first week of October. I think it's October 5th or something like that. That dude was 20 and playing in the NFL and playing well. That doesn't happen at the tight end position. So I think Kyle Pitts is just an absolute monster, and I think he's going to be great. Flex Bateman or Drake London. I would go with Rashad Bateman. I think Herbert will be okay. Long week to recover, and the fact he stayed in the game. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I haven't seen the x-rays. I hope so. I really hope so. The fact they stayed in the game, look, adrenaline can be, a valuable thing in the moment, but we'll see what the x-rays show. Hopefully he's okay. Sky Moore just dead for fantasy this year. Don't think he played an offensive snap, just kick returns. Look, the thing with Sky Moore, if you were following along with preseason, he was clearly he was running behind Justin Watson in the preseason. He was running behind Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Mecole Hardman and Juju Smith-Schuster. It was clear he was at best the number 5 guy. But the case for Sky Moore was always his role is going to grow. And nobody in this offense so far has made it so that Sky Moore can't get an opportunity. Maybe Sky Moore is just not impressive in practice. Maybe he's not ready. Maybe he's not good. But I don't think the case for Sky Moore has changed much since the preseason. I was expecting him to be limited in the offense. And, if I was drafting him, it was with a stash in mind. So if you need the roster spot, go ahead and drop him. I'm not going to say that you can't drop him, but I'm not going to say you have to drop him either. I'm going to do a couple more questions before I go, but really happy that you guys have hung out. There's 578 people at midnight Eastern time. That's awesome. So thanks so much for hanging out. We'll do this every Thursday night, and maybe we'll do a couple more throughout the week. Who knows? Kyle Pitts has no real playmakers around him, so it'll be easy to double and triple team him. Falcons don't have anything scary on offense except him. You are underrating Drake London. I think you're underrating Cordero Patterson. I think there's enough around him that he'll be fine. Will Robert Woods become fantasy relevant again, or is he on the hot seat? He's another guy that I really liked coming into the season. I think I drafted him more than any other player, actually, because he was so cheap. And the week 1 usage was not great. He ran a route on like 74% of their offensive or their pass plays, which is not what you want from a number 1 wide receiver, especially when you've got Kyle Phillips and Treylon Burks, ascending. So Robert Woods, very disappointing. Certainly not starting him this week, but I want to give him a chance because he was coming back from the torn ACL. This was his first game action. So, in that light, the 75% snap share or target share, whatever, route share, excuse me, you could twist that as a positive if you want. What did CH do to hurt me? Nothing. He's got like 15 carries through 2 games. He's not going to average 9 yards per carry every week. Now, he'll get more than 8 carries, I would assume, most weeks. But this is a Kansas City offense that has not made a point of focusing on him or prioritizing him. And, even early on in this game, there were a handful of, the first drive, they were getting him involved, but they went away from him after that. And yes, he had the knee injury where he got stepped on. He was back in the game shortly after that. But I don't think he's a great talent. I don't think he's a big part of their passing game. Jerick McKinnon gets most of the passing snaps. So I don't think there's much upside for CEH. Should I make space on my bench and pick up Tyrion Davis-Price just in case Jeff Wilson's not the answer? If you've got the space, I think there's a decent chance Tyrion Davis-Price is the 3rd running back for San Francisco, but It's also possible that like Jordan Mason was active in week 1 because he plays special teams and Tyrion Davis-Price doesn't. And actually Tyrion Davis-Price is the backup running back. So I think it's worth a stash, but if he doesn't play this week, then you just drop him. Wentz or Lawrence? Let's see. I think I have Lawrence ranked higher than Wentz. I do. Should I accept this trade from the Justin Herbert roster? Amari Cooper for Tom Brady. I have Jalen Hurts as my QB1. No, you got to get more than Amari Cooper for Tom Brady. I think Cooper's a good player, but Jacoby Brissett can't push the ball down the field, and that's going to be an issue for Amari Cooper all season. So yeah, I would ask for more, especially knowing that Justin Herbert, the person who has Justin Herbert, is probably, could be desperate. Is Romeo Doubs a stash? Absolutely. I think he's below Christian Watson on the stash rankings. I think he's below George Pickens. I think he's probably more in the Sky Moore range, where you're hoping that he turns into a player down the line. I don't think the chances of it happening in week 2 are particularly likely. So he probably needs to work his way into a bigger role. I would rather have Treylon Burks than Romeo Doubs. So, still a lower end stash. Tyrion Davis-Price was a healthy scratch in week 1, but like I said, sometimes you see this when you follow, these things. Sometimes what you'll see is the guy who plays special teams gets the game day activation. And Jordan Mason was playing special teams. I don't think he played an offensive snap in week 1. And then what you'll see sometimes, if there's an injury higher up on the depth chart, then the guy who's the actual backup gets brought in. And I think, there's a chance that Tyrion Davis-Price is the actual backup. I'm prioritizing Jordan Mason just based on what I've heard out of training camp, what I've heard from, the beat writers in San Francisco, but there's a chance Tyrion Davis-Price is ahead of Jordan Mason. And then we'll close it out with a big one. Bucks versus Saints thoughts. This is the toughest situation in football this week. You've got 2 really good defenses in the Buccaneers and the Saints. So, tough situations there. And then you've got basically everybody on the injury report for these 2 teams, especially the Buccaneers. You've got Mike Evans, who didn't practice on Thursday with that calf injury. Julio Jones didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday with the knee injury. You've got Russell Gage was limited on Thursday after missing practice Wednesday with the hamstring injury. Chris Godwin, obviously, we're expecting him to miss 2 to 3 weeks. So, yeah, that's a mess. And it's a tough matchup. Like I said, the Saints have had Tom Brady's number in his time in Tampa Bay. Mike Evans, I think he has 1 game, as Adam said, with more than 13 PPR points against Marshawn Lattimore in his career. So I'm viewing Evans, even if he does play, as more like a wide receiver 3 this week than a must-start guy. And Julio Jones is probably more in that range as well. Leonard Fournette, I expect him to be very good. He's dealing with a hamstring injury, but he's been limited. I think he'll be okay. And then Alvin Kamara has a rib injury for the Saints, and he didn't practice on Thursday after being limited Wednesday. Dennis Allen talked about it earlier in the week, and he said he didn't think it was a serious issue for Alvin Kamara. So I'm holding out hope that Alvin Kamara will be fine when we get Friday's injury report and he'll play on Sunday. But, obviously a concern given the limited workload that he had in week 1, the limited opportunities in the passing game. That was disappointing to see. Hopefully that was the result of the injury and he'll be fine moving forward. But yeah, Bucks versus Saints is could be a real mess for fantasy. And I'm starting Michael Thomas as a top 15 wide receiver. I'm starting Leonard Fournette as a top 10 running back. If Kamara plays, he'll be a top 10 running back for me. If he doesn't and Mark Ingram is active, he'll be a top 24-ish running back. So that's the way I'm handling that game. And that's going to do it for this stream for Fantasy Football Today. Thanks so much for tuning in late at night on a Thursday night after Thursday Night Football. We're going to try to do this every week. So every Thursday night will be Adam and I doing the Fantasy Football Today in 5 podcast. It'll be like 5 to, it's more like Fantasy Football Today in 7 if you listen to it. But, we try to keep it on the shorter side to get some of that news that you need. And then I'll be here for, we'll say 30 to 45 minutes every Thursday night answering your questions. So Thanks so much for hanging out, and we'll see you next time. Take care.